name is Mark Gauthier. I'm a wildlife biologist and a journalist and a filmmaker from Spokane, Washington. And heard about what was happening down here on the news and got here 8 days ago and headed straight out to Grand Isle. I saw it was the southernmost tip in Louisiana and the only inhabited barrier island. About 3 days in, we started getting the first signs of oil, and it just started as a sheen.
Yeah, like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we didn't see this oil at lunchtime. And now we're noticing oil right off of our wharf. So there goes the fishing. We can't see it in the water, but it's against the rock. So that means it has to be coming in from below.
I walk the beach every day, and the first thing I saw was just some sheen in the foamy bubbles that were just washing the shore. And so we knew things were potentially heading our way.
We got at least twice as much oil today as we did yesterday, and big globs coming up. Look at this.
Folks had 30 days to prepare, and there was basically no preparation that, other than putting booms out, that we're all laying up on the beaches. It did finally get out, thankfully, in the pass between Grand Isle and Elmer's Isle, and they were able to catch a bunch of that floating oil in the booms. There was a pump truck pumping all that oil off, and they had the pump truck driver. I was sitting there filming him, talking to him, and he had two options. He had a $75 an hour pump, and then he had a $150 an hour pump. And that $150 an hour pump pumped 4 times the volume of oil. But BP would only authorize him to use the $75 an hour pump. And he sat there looking at us on that dock and saying, if I could use that $150 pump, I'd be keeping up with all this oil right now. But instead, what happened was he couldn't keep up with all that oil, and it got by, and he had to quit that night.
I don't know if that's oil. Well, I would hate to put them back in the water.
I know, William, they're going to get full of oil.
Where's the backup crew? I've learned by being down here that these oil rigs run 12 hours, one crew, next crew, 12 hours, 24/7. There's crews running those rigs. Yet the cleanup crews are running 8-hour shifts. So this gentleman, you know, he's got to make a living, he's got to get his check, he left for the day. So what happens now? The tide changes, and all that oil that was left is carried to all the camps along that shoreline and covered their rocks and their beaches.
Exactly what we don't want. This stuff is thick. It's about several inches thick, and it's getting covered up now by the sand, and it's going to get sealed up in this beach and come out for years. Oh well. Look at the birds.
So now the next day, I decided to go out because we're looking for birds that have been oiled. And so I head out on my kayak, and as I get out in there, I start paddling in nothing but pure sheen. And I'm only 2 feet off the water. I'm looking for birds. There's oil everywhere, heat of the day. And I started to get nauseous and headache. So I quickly decided something wasn't right and I better turn around. So I turned around and paddled for shore, and I only had about maybe a 15-minute paddle, and I literally barely made it to shore. To the first camp I saw with people, complete strangers, and I told them what kind of shape I was in and that something was wrong. They let me jump into a cold shower, told me to hang out, and I passed out. I fell asleep on their swinging chair on the porch for 3 hours before I was able to recuperate. So that's when I knew there was fume and noxious toxins in the air that were causing problems. There's no doubt in my mind. And today was one of the most traumatic days for me. I went out to Grand Terre Isle. All the beaches on Grand Isle, all 7 miles of beaches are now closed, and sheriffs are patrolling. They won't even let you down to look at the oil. So I got up first thing this morning, tried to get to the beach early because I'd like to see, you know, what kind of fatalities were experienced on the beach, but they don't want anybody to see that. Tell them I was down on the beach, instantly greeted by a sheriff and told you can't be on the beach. So basically we were shut off from doing anything. It just so happened there was an LSU bird biologist down to do a count on Grande Terre Isle. And the entire shoreline was coated in thick, heavy oil. About 6 feet across, about 2 inches deep, and for the entire stretch of that 2.5 miles. And there were some patches even 20 feet across and 2 inches deep, completely coated. And what I very quickly started to see was dead fish. And this was the first time I experienced a volume of dead fish like this in my life. And about literally every 10 to 20 yards was another dead fish, another dead fish. And quickly started to see a pattern. They're all catfish, and they're all drummed. Some 40, 50 pound, beautiful, mature, big old drum. All bottom feeders. All this oil has had the dispersant put on it. It's all on the bottom. It's all rolling in from the bottom. So all these bottom dwellers are the ones getting the first contact. And then during the bird count, there was recorded 28 different species, 500 total birds, and of those, 30 had oil on them. So that's 6% of the bird population. And it was mostly birds that forage along the shorelines and that do shallow diving. So it's terns, sanderlings, oyster catchers, things like that. And the problem is, these birds can still fly, but they're oiled. So you can't catch them. And what they do is they sit there and incessantly preen themselves, trying to clean that oil off. Preen, 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 preen. Well, they can't get the oil off, and they consume it. Then they get sick. And then they go just into the brush and die on their own. You know, as a wildlife biologist today, and a guy that's dedicated his life to protecting wildlife, for me, it was one of the most tragic scenes I've ever seen in my life. On the way out, that oil was nice and smooth. It was morning time. And as the heat of the day started boiling down on that oil, it started bubbling up. I was watching it just bubble, 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 gas bubbles, toxics into the air. About halfway back down the beach after being out there all day, the smell was growing, starting to get that headache again. My other buddy's getting a headache, so we better get back to shore. We get into shore. By the time we get to shore, 2 of us have excruciating headaches. And I just got out and I was just standing there talking and I puke.